There's a new transfer rumor involving the New England Revolution. Let's discuss. Hi everyone, I'm Julian Cardillo, a soccer writer with the Boston Herald and a 15-year veteran of covering the New England Revolution and MLS. I also run the Cover the Pitch Substack, as well as this YouTube channel, so consider subscribing to both. Okay, so as I mentioned at the top, there is a new transfer rumor involving the Revolution. It is an unconfirmed report out of Italy about Patrick Cutrone, an Italian striker who is being linked to the Revolution, as well as Sporting Kansas City and DC United. Now, the reason I wanted to examine this is because he's the sort of profile that you would expect the Revolution to be interested in, given the state of their attack, the fact that they've only scored 26 goals this season, which is near the bottom, and the fact that head coach Caleb Porter has said that they may go ahead this summer and look for some reinforcements in the attack. Now, Cutrone is a known quantity. He's a veteran striker, 27 years old. He recently finished an impressive campaign with Como, had 8 goals, 5 assists, but what was mostly impressive about it is that he appeared in most games for the Serie A club, who defied expectations. Remember that they're newly promoted and they finished mid-table in Serie A this past season. Now, it is important to take these transfer rumors with a grain of salt. In Italy, they tend to fly fast and furious, especially in the summertime, and I will be getting into the veracity of this report a little bit later on in the video. But another important thing to note is that the MLS teams aren't the only ones being linked to Cutrone. Sassuolo, who were a Serie B team last year and are making their Serie A return this year, have also reportedly been courting him, as have Genoa. So I think Cutrone is a really interesting profile, particularly for a team like the Revolution. So let's go into the pros and cons of what a player like this might offer the team. The biggest pro by far is that he is an established goal scorer. He is an experienced attacking player. He's a true number 9. Those are all things the Revolution really desperately need. They haven't been getting the production out of the attack that they've wanted this season, and someone who can come in and be a real presence on the attacking side of the field would really be a boon to the team, particularly with a dangerous playmaker in Carlos Gil, who is currently leading the Revolution in goals. Now, Cutrone has scored 30 goals across the last 3 seasons with Como. He had 8, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, in the past season. That was a drop-off from the 14 he scored in Serie B a season ago when he helped Como gain promotion to Serie A, but that doesn't concern me too much because Serie A is known to be a defensive league and the quality in Serie B is a little bit less. Another pro from my point of view is that Cutrone is generally very healthy. He's quite fit, he's never dealt with a major injury, and injuries have really taken the Revolution strike force victim over the last year or two. Thomas Chancalay is rebounding from an ACL tear this season. Leonardo Campana has been up and down the injury list, and Maxi Urruti has had to play additional minutes, maybe beyond what was expected of him, because the strike force is so thin. And finally, Cutrone is 27 years old, which means he is at or near his peak, and therefore some of the best soccer is still yet to come from him, one would think. In terms of the cons, I am generally a little bit cautious with foreign strikers, particularly those coming out of Europe, because the learning curve to MLS does sometimes tend to be a little bit bigger for these players. If you are a longtime follower of the New England Revolution, you know this all too well. Giacomo Vrioni never really settled into a role as a true scorer for this team, and before that, Adam Buxa, who was a hugely talented attacking player, only scored 7 goals in his first season with the Revolution before really hitting a stride in seasons 2 and 3. So it can take some time to really build up that confidence and that familiarity with the style of play in MLS. Which brings me on to the second con, which is that Cutrone is seemingly not really built for a non-Italian league. He went to Wolverhampton Wanderers in the Premier League and was recently named one of their worst transfers of all time. He lasted about 6 months there before going back to Serie A with Fiorentina. He also failed to score a single time in 7 appearances with Valencia. So I see someone who is maybe built for the Italian leagues, maybe struggles a little bit more outside of Serie A and Serie B. And finally, maybe not necessarily a con, but this is a segue into the finances, how the Revolution, or any team for that matter, would make this happen. Now, Cutrone is a player of significant quality, so for the sake of argument, I'm going to suggest that any team in MLS would be looking to bring him on as a designated player. That may not necessarily be true, but just for the purposes of this video, we're going to treat Cutrone as a prospective DP. Now, one thing to note is that Cutrone is under contract with Como. So despite these transfer rumors, a team would need to come up with a loan deal or come up with a transfer fee in order to pry him from Como. That's true of the Revolution, and it's true of anybody else who will want his services in the coming months. So, do the Revolution have the means to acquire a player like Cutrone? The answer is a tentative yes. And the reason it's tentative is because this year MLS debuted a new model for clubs to build out their rosters. This model is known as the roster construction path, of which there are two paths, the designated player path and the U22 path. In the designated player model, teams can sign up to 3 designated players and up to 3 under 22 initiative players. In the U22 initiative model, players can sign up to 2 designated players and up to 4 under 22 initiative players, and then receive an additional $2 million in general allocation money. Now, at the beginning of the season, the Revolution opted to use the second model. However, the Revolution have only used 2 of the 4 U22 slots, so they do have the flexibility to change their model, which the rules would allow them to do after the summer transfer window opens in July. The official date for this is July 24th. Earlier this season, in the spring, MLS also published the amount of salary budget teams have available, at least in terms of general allocation money, which a team would use to buy down a designated player spot. And currently, the Revolution are just below the amount of money they would need. They would need around $372,000 in general allocation money to pay down a designated player that arrives mid-season, meaning in July or onward. Theoretically, they'd have to make some kind of a move to open up more of those funds and grow their coffers in general allocation money. Now, these rules are complex and they would apply regardless of who the player in question was. If it's a DP, whether it's Patrick Cutrone or somebody else, the Revolution basically have to come up with the means to change their roster path and open up the space to pay off that third designated player slot. But I'd like to now get into whether this rumor is trustworthy at all. I certainly think this is one to watch. This is a player who is established, who can fill a need with the Revolution as well as with the other teams with which he is currently linked. However, I do have some doubts about the source. Not that this is the be-all end-all because typos happen, but the source said that Cutrone had a strong season last year in Serie B, which is factually incorrect. He, in fact, had a strong season in Serie A, which is where Como competed last year. So far, there's no one really official, a bigger newspaper in Italy like La Stampa or the Gazzetta dello Sport, who have corroborated these reports. And it is still early in the window. Things may ramp up even further, and we'll just have to wait and see. I also am not sure how much a team like Como, that had a really strong entry into Serie A, would be willing to give up a player like Cutrone, who's an established veteran, who has served as the captain of the team. And I don't know how much Cutrone would want to go to MLS if there are teams in Serie A that are interested in his services. So it is one to watch, but it is maybe a rumor that we'll forget about soon enough. But anything can happen in soccer, so we'll just have to stay tuned. At any rate, thanks so much for watching this Cover the Pitch video. There will be a Pitch Points out on Wednesday morning, and be on the lookout for a podcast with the Boston Globe's Frank Delapa soon. Thanks.